The A7 IV, the best camera ever. So good for photo and so good for video. It does everything.
It's not very good, and let me explain that. I bought this camera this last year for a B cam to my A7S III and to accompany my FX6 as soon as it came to me, which it still hasn't yet. My first impression was this is a great camera for a lot of people, but not for me. Even though I used it on several jobs, I took it with me to Italy, used it for my own wedding video, but here are my main reasons for selling it. Number one, ISO and for low light video. Being someone who used the A7 III extensively for a long time, and at one point had 4 of them, I think that this camera is almost a step back from that camera. You could work with the A7 III in crazy low light situations. And I'm not saying that this camera isn't good at low light, but I feel like it wasn't as usable at higher ISOs than the A7 III was. It didn't clean up as well. I shot primarily S-Log3 and S-Cinetone. For all the job stuff I did, it was all S-Log3. When I took it to Italy, I shot S-Cinetone because I was really up in the air about Italy and if I should take my A7S III or the A7 IV, because I really wanted something with good photos. And I'll get to that here in a second on the photo side of things. But for video, obviously I should have brought the A7S III just because we were shooting constantly with, practically no light, shooting at nighttime, shooting in the middle of the day. Dynamic range is better on the A7S III. I do wholeheartedly think that, and I'll get down into some of that stuff also here in a second. Just to talk a little bit more about the A7 IV and ISO and low light, it didn't really feel like it had a great distance between the two ISOs. In S-Log3, you had 800, which I really do like that 640. It is nice. I know it's only one stop, but still it does make a bit of a difference. And that 12,800 ISO is so nice to have, especially if you don't want to light something. If you're just trying to be quick and dirty and just fast in and out, that 12,800 just gets so far. For instance, if I'm using the A7S III with the 50mm 1.2 GM, I have all of that range at 12,800, and then if I want to throw a little ND on it too, like if it's dark, I can get so far with that. It makes such a big difference. I have such a good understanding of the A7S III and what it can do at the native ISOs, and I just felt a little let down with the A7 IV. Even though I went into it knowing that the dual ISO on that was 800 and 3200 in S-Log3, I just thought that I could get a little bit further with it, and it didn't turn out to be that way. I use a camera for what it is and what it can produce. And to me personally, the A7 IV kind of fell flat on its face in that category. Does that mean it's not a good camera? No. It just wasn't the right camera for me in that situation. I think I just need to understand that I'm looking for something a little bit more professional, for a lack of better words. And for me, the A7S III for video just makes way more sense, just because of the dual ISO range. And even with like the A1, I sent back the A1 because I wasn't getting out of it what I wanted personally. I like to shoot at 12,000, like right now I'm shooting at 12,800, f4, and I have ND on. And I like that. I like that I have so much longitude back and forth to be able to adjust this image any way I want if I shoot at 12,800. If I shoot at 3,200, I would have to bump that up, take off the ND, turn down the light a lot, where I can just throw up a camera at 12,800, dial in the ND a little bit, and I'm set. I'm perfect. Like I'm shooting 1/50th of a second, f4, ISO 12,800. I have my light 600D set to like 10. I've got a backlight and a white bounce right here. That's it. It was an easy setup. With the A7 IV, it was a lot more, it's not a ton of heavy lifting, but the A1, the A7 IV, the new A7R5, they're all gonna be that same caliber. That's why I like the FX3, the FX30 is that same boat, but the FX3, the A7S III and the FX6, at those higher ISO ranges, it makes it so nice to be able to adjust this image any way I want with that 12,800. That's why it's there, that's what it's for, and you can utilize it fully in these cameras. And number two, photos. The 33 megapixel sensor looked great, and I think takes a great photo if you stay within the camera's like safety spot. What I mean by safety spot is in its ISO range of quality photo, which I feel like is somewhere in that, very low ISO up to like maybe 3200. I got a lot of muddiness at 3200 ISO. Even if I clean up the photos, they still didn't look great. And I was shooting with f4.5, 100 to 400 G Master. I was shooting with the 7200, f2.8 G Master. I was shooting with the 24 to 70, f2.8 G Master Mark II. I was shooting with the 24 to 105, and nothing felt like, they didn't feel as robust. That's probably a really good word to use. The A7S III, the raw files in this, they're so small, at 12 megapixels, you don't have a lot of like room to crop or do things with, but they look good, they look full, they look really like clean and robust, and you can move things around a lot, even though they're only 12 megapixel. With the A7R4, like it doesn't even matter. Anything you shoot with that thing is just beautiful. It's a beautiful photo. And you have so much longitude up and down to work with that photo. It's so robust. And this just felt like kind of flat. And the A7 III kind of felt this same way a little bit with photo. I never really thought of it that way, but after using like the A7S III and the A7R4 for photo, I don't know. I just think that this camera kind of fell flat on its face in that category also. I think the moral to the story of this, and I've got a few more bullet points to go through, is that this camera does everything okay, but it's not the begin all end all when it comes to photo or video, because it kind of just does them. It doesn't do them great. And I think that's the point of this camera, is for entry level or for someone to use for weddings and things like that. And I'm not saying you can't get a great image. I think for certain types of people, they can create something beautiful with this. And I'm looking for something that's more streamlined and something I can grab out of right away and use and create something awesome. Do I think the files, like if I was to shoot the A7S III and the A7 IV side by side at the same ISO, could you tell a difference? Maybe. I don't think it's gonna be much different. But when using the camera with the options you have is where it comes into which one do you want to use. All right, number 3 is how slow this camera is. And when I say slow, I mean like the boot up time, going to black sometimes when I would turn it on. I had a lot of little issues like that where I would turn it on and the EVF wouldn't be working, and then the LCD screen wouldn't be working, and I'd have to either turn it back off, turn it back on again, or just wait a couple of seconds for it to actually boot up. I'm so used to like A7S III, FX6, FX3, they boot up so fast and they're just like, boop, on. You turn the switch, it's on. I've had a couple of times with my A7S III where it has completely just shut out on me and I've had to take out the battery, put it back in. But I was doing that, like when I was in Italy, I was on and off, on and off, on and off, because I was taking photos, walking around, see something else, take a photo, turn it off. I was taking out the battery all the time because the thing would freeze up on me. And I don't know if that was something I was doing wrong by turning it off. Maybe I should have left it on and just let it like sit idle or go to sleep mode. But I always found that you'd waste a little bit more battery doing that, and I was carrying around 2 or 3 batteries, whole thing, whatever. But turning it off and on a lot, I found that the more I turned it off and on, the more I was having those issues. And I never had that problem with my A7R4 or my A7S III, besides maybe just a few fluke things with the A7S III, but those were usually after firmware, and I don't know. Sure, there's always problems with every kind of technology, but it seemed like it was happening a lot, and the boot up time sometimes took longer than I wanted it to. So that's all I have to say about the slowness of the camera. It just sometimes was a little bit slower. Number 4, the viewfinder. This one's big for me. I use the viewfinder in my A7S III quite a bit for video. If I don't have it rigged up and I'm just shooting like photo and video a day, or like a wedding or something like that, I will look through the viewfinder because it's so crisp, and sometimes you can't see the screen if you're trying to be small and kind of like lightweight or discreet even. So I'll look through the viewfinder. In Italy, I was looking through the viewfinder all the time because I was taking a lot of photo, and then sometimes it would be bright sun, so I would look through the viewfinder for video also. And when I got home from Italy and I looked through the viewfinder of my A7S III again for something, I couldn't believe the difference. Now, I'm not one to say like, I can tell the difference so crazy, but it was a substantial difference between the A7 IV and the A7S III. And again, I know that there's a price difference. I know they're not gonna put all the high-end stuff in them, but it was a huge difference. And I could definitely see why some things you shoot through the viewfinder could be a little fuzzy on the back end. When you look at it on the screen and then you look at it through the viewfinder, like an edit mode on the camera, I could see that you'd be like, okay, that looks sharp. And then when you go to the computer, it's not sharp because you weren't able to see it as well as you could on like the A7S III, A7R4, A7R5, blah, 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 blah. The point is, the viewfinder on the A7 IV, it sucked. And it wasn't great. It's better, I guess, than the A7 III. I'll put it up on the screen right now. The A7 III, A7S III, and the A7 IV's viewfinder resolution right here, right now. And you can see that there's a big difference between the three of them. So that's just, it's kind of nitpicky, but it was a huge difference. And when you're spending the money on these things at $2,500, I know it's not $3,499 or $3,500 or $4,000 or even the $6,000 A1 or $7,000 A1. I know it's not those cameras, and it doesn't necessarily have to have like the brightest and best EVF, but you're still spending $2,500. It's still a lot of money. I mean, you have to work a lot of hours and do a lot of things for $2,500. Like, it's a lot of money. I just think that these cameras should have a little bit more for what these prices are. But I also understand, you know, supply and demand and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Maybe I'm out to lunch on all this stuff. Number 5, it just kind of feels cheap. I said it, I'll say it again. It just kind of feels cheap. It feels a little bit lighter, feels a little cheaper quality. It is close to half of the full price of the A7S III. At the same time, like, it's $2,500. It should feel like it's $2,500, and it doesn't, to me, personally feel like it's worth $2,500. It feels like it's worth $1,500, maybe $1,800. I don't know. Cameras are just expensive. It drives me crazy how much these things are. We want to create things, you have to afford it. It's expensive. You gotta buy a light, you gotta buy a bounce card, you gotta buy a microphone, you gotta buy a camera, ND, you gotta buy a monitor. Like, the camera's the cheap part in some facets, but still, $2,500 for that thing? I don't know. Number 6, the dial on top. All right, so this one, I see a lot of people love the dial on top. It's photo, video, and S&Q mode, so you can kind of switch between the three of them fairly quickly. I never fell in love with it. I really like the dial on top where you push and then turn that dial, like on the A7S III. It just feels more like you're locked in to whatever that is. It just feels more robust, I guess. That switch feels kind of cheap. Feels like it's gonna break. Like, if I press on it hard enough, like I could bend it in and break it, and then you're what? SOL. Like, you can't change anything. I think it's interesting, and I think that they could put it in a different way, but I never really loved it when I was switching between it a lot in Italy, going from photo to video, photo to video. I mean, I guess the quickness of it is nice. Like, if you're going back and forth, like on a wedding day, if you're shooting both photo and video, in that case, I think you're crazy. You should do one or the other. I don't think you should do both on a wedding day. Regardless, it seems like it's kind of flimsy and cheap and gonna break over time. I could be wrong. I mean, they put it on the A7R5, so maybe they made that one more robust. They learned from the A7 IV, or it just, people love it and it works. I could be out to lunch on that one also. So there are my reasons for not liking this camera, and here are a few why I liked it, so you don't think this is all about me just bagging on the A7 IV. And some of it is bagging on it, but here's some things I liked about the A7 IV that we can touch on. 10-bit 422 video. Over the A7 III, that's huge. Now, you know, obviously the A7 III was an 8-bit camera, and those files were good. They worked great. They were editable. They looked good. You could shoot S-Log2. You couldn't really shoot in S-Log2 S-Gamut 3 Cine. It'd be more like ITUX9 something or other. That looked really good shooting in that. And I would use HLG on that camera all the time, the hybrid log gamma, because it looked good and it felt robust enough. And there were some things about it that I didn't like too on the A7 III, but having 10-bit color in the A7 IV at that price point is really, really awesome. 4K 60, even though it's cropped, that's pretty cool. I think that's awesome that they included that for wedding people or people who are shooting some B-roll. Even though it's cropped, I know that's kind of a pain for a lot of people, but it's not a horrible crop and it works great. So it looks sharp. It always looked really good when I was shooting 4K 60. So yeah, it worked good. I think that's a big plus. Better codecs and recording options. The fact that you get all intra is pretty nice. Being able to shoot with the CFast Type A cards is pretty cool. So you can get some files that are easily editable. You don't have to shoot H.265, which is really nice. That's a big positive over the A7 III and even like the R5 and stuff like that, where those were just hard to edit for a long time until you get up to like the M1 Max or something like that and Apple stuff. But I'm an Apple guy. I don't edit on PC. But that difference was huge. The fact that you have the same body as the A7R4, A7R5 now, and the A7S III, A1, that's nice because you don't have to change out all of your stuff if you've got a cage, if you've got handles or whatever you need, or the battery grip. That's so nice that it just fit. So that's a big plus. I think that's huge for the A7 IV also. And the last thing that I liked about it was a 33 megapixel sensor. Barring the things I just said in this video about not liking the photos out of this camera very much, it did take a good photo. If you hit that sweet spot, you have to learn where that sweet spot is, and if you hit that sweet spot of where this camera performs well, it takes a good photo. And the fact that you've got 33 megapixels to work with is awesome. If you want to use shoot in crop mode, you have a, what is that, 15, like 12, 13, 15, somewhere in there range. It's not quite half, it's a little underneath half. But the fact that you have a pretty robust photo still, if you shoot in crop mode on the A7S III, you're shooting with like a 2 megapixel photo. So it just depends on what you're doing with the camera, but having that feature is nice. And having that 33 megapixels is awesome. Did I want more megapixels when I was shooting with this camera? Yes, but that just goes back to the old saying, like, you just want what you don't have. I would have loved 61, 63, whatever the A7R5 is, 61 megapixels. That would have been awesome to have on multiple trips. Or even the A7S III. I think it's just, I'm a sucker for it, I have it. I think it's the best camera. Can you produce a great image with the A7 IV? Yes, 100% yes. Is it a good camera? Yes, it absolutely is a good camera. It just wasn't good for my needs. That's why I'm making this video, because you may fit in the same category as me and I like to talk about this stuff. Plus I need to make content, so here you go. I think more than anything, I just never meshed with this camera. And that's on me. It's not on the camera, that's on me. I just never really fell in love with it for the price point. Did it work? Yeah. Was I gonna sell my A7S III? Hell no. What should you get instead of the A7 IV if you're gonna be shooting video and taking photo? I think it depends, again, on what you're doing, who you are, that kind of stuff. But I would say look at the Canon R6, look at the Canon R5, the A7S III, the FX3. I don't know about the FX30, haven't used it yet. Tell me your thoughts on that camera if you want to. I don't know if it's great or not. A7R4, A7R3, those are both gonna be cheaper cameras at this point. No 10-bit, 422. But they take great photos. They do pretty well with video. You're not going to be anywhere near to like the low light capabilities of this camera, the A7S III or FX3 or whatever, but they're viable options. They're not like throw them away, just like the A7 IV is. So that's all I got, really. I hope you got something from this. I don't know if I gave you anything or if I got something from this. These are my thoughts on the A7 IV and why I won't be ever picking one up again unless I need something really small and cheap for a video or photo type scenario. Like, I don't know, maybe if it's on sale for like $1,500 or something crazy like that down the road, maybe you pick up another one just to have in your bag. But then again, you can buy a lens or something like that for the camera you already have. So, moral of the story is, just because something says it can do it all, it doesn't mean that it can do it all really well. And in my case, for me personally, it didn't feel like it was the right camera in my bag. Take that for what it is, whatever you feel like that means to you. But at the end of the day, thank you very much for watching this video in its entirety. If you're still here, it's awesome. Thank you again. I appreciate it. Hit that thumbs up if you like this video, or thumbs down if you didn't. Either way, totally get it. And subscribe if you haven't. No pressure. I'm not gonna pressure you into it. If you want to, I appreciate it. Thank you in advance. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.